wondering.
Call to order the City Council work session for City of East Grand Forks, Tuesday, September 24th, 2019. City Administrator, please call roll.
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olstad.
Here.
Council Vice President Chad Grassel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Better.
Here.
Dale Helms.
Here.
Tim Riopel.
Here.
Tim Johnson.
Here.
And Mark Demers. Present.
Does the term quorum. Number 1, consider approving the sale and development of Coulee View lots on Block 1 north of 13th Street Southeast. Mr. Gorte.
The city owns lots in Coulee View still. These are the lots, with one exception, the lots the city still owns in Coulee View. Mr. Robertson has come forward and said he'd like to have the opportunity to build twin homes on 2 of the lots that are existing, and then the other 3 lots he'd like to put a threeplex, a triplex on there. The city owns the land, so the city has to give permission for him to proceed. The city will technically be the applicant on this. So the issue is not the approval of the proposal. The issue before you is, would you consider selling the lots to be built as twin homes and as a triplex so that Mr. Robertson can proceed? He has already given us a check that would suffice as the earnest money for those homes if you decide to proceed. If you decide not to, and that'll be at your regular meeting or your special meeting after the conclusion of this meeting. If you decide not to, then we would just return that check to him. But Mr. Robertson is here and can talk further about the proposal. There was a copy of the proposal that he's put forth in your packet today. So in case you have any questions about that, but that requires an amendment to the PUD that will be going through the Planning Commission. And Nancy, in order to advertise this and allow Mr. Robertson time to begin work this fall, needs to get information. We need to resolve this now so Nancy can do her advertising too. So there's a press of time to move this forward at today. Okay?
Does anybody have any? Mr. Grassel?
Is the threeplex very similar to the one that was on the other side?
Yep.
We're correct?
Yep, that we're building right
So it
now.
doesn't look like, it looks like very similar to what you did in the past.
Right there.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
This is what the other 2 will look like right here. We moved the garages in the center. That way we didn't have problems with power or water or sewer. So we switched them so everything fits now.
Anybody have any questions?
I'd just say it sure looks like a good fit for that parcel of land. I think it's a really good use of the land, and I'm glad that came forward now, and look forward to seeing it there.
150 deer are going to be mad though.
That's something. I mean, we have deer running by our threeplex right now almost every day.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
No turrets though, right? No turrets?
No.
Okay.
So we need a city hunt?
Yeah. Mr. Demers?
Thank you, Mr. President. I too am in favor of this project. Just wondering if you think you're going to require fill from the city.
I'm sorry.
Are you going to require fill?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because, it's going to be walkout basements.
Okay.
So I have my doubts.
Okay.
If I may, the city has on its lots made 1,000 cubic yards of fill available per lot up in Water's Edge, and up to 5,000 cubic yards of clay available for the lots down at Coulee View.
Right,
So
and
that
I
is
just
available,
was making
but
sure
it'll be what he needs.
He was aware that was an option. And then I guess on not this property, but are we done with the cul-de-sac on the 14th project? Did that get redone and paved? And
Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but you were saying that you were going to be paving that when you paved the driveways for the one just south of there?
Which one's this now?
The cul-de-sac where you, just across on the west side of Bigland.
That isn't me.
Yeah, the cul-de-sac, because you had to tear it up for the sanitary sewer.
Oh, and yeah, Schmidt's actually been contacting he's the one that's going to do it. And for some reason, they haven't turned him loose on it yet. I haven't. That's all
Somebody
I
told
know.
one of our staff that they were going to do it when they poured the driveways for the ones in the south. The south
No,
that they were
I said I'd fix that sidewalk. We have a sidewalk that's dipped down, and we're gonna pop that up and fix it, but as far as the cul-de-sac, Schmidt's the one handling that.
Well, maybe Jason, you want to follow up on that, because we should probably get that done pretty quickly. Now, will it show a sidewalk on here? Is there sidewalk already on that side?
Sidewalk on the side.
Okay, so, that's all I was wondering. Thank you. Good luck.
All right.
Anybody else have anything? I see none. Appreciate it. Okay, move on to number 2, introduction to the Greater Grand Forks American Indian Parent Committee. I know Sreya's here. I'm not sure if you want to introduce everybody, Sreya, and have they come up and speak, or how you want to handle that? So if you want to come up,
Sure.
sit right there.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sreya Driscoll. I'm with East Grand Forks Public Schools. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning. And we receive dollars from the state of Minnesota to serve our American Indian students. And as part of that, we have to have a parent committee, an American Indian Parent Committee, as a piece of the grant that we receive, the dollars we receive. So we make decisions together, and we've been kind of a small group, and so we joined with Grand Forks Public Schools, and now we have the Greater Grand Forks group, parent advisory group. So with us this evening, we have Dr. Don Warren. Hello. And his wife, Maylin, and Courtney Suvanska, and Erica. And they're here to visit with you about an invitation. So,
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Dr. Donald Warren. I'm originally from South Dakota, but have kind of worked all over the country and made my way all the way up to North Dakota from where our starting points. I'm a family physician, also have training in public health, and I'm currently the Associate Dean at the medical school at University of North Dakota, and have been on faculty now just a little bit over a year. So my wife and I and our 4 kids moved here to East Grand Forks a little over a year ago. So we have kids in the school systems here at multiple levels. And just as a side note, we've felt very welcomed here. It's a wonderful community. We've been very happy living here. We've lived in other parts of North Dakota and South Dakota, Arizona as well. But we really feel like we have a wonderful home here. And we've been always involved with the Parent Committee for American Indian Education, because it's important for us to make sure our kids feel culturally connected no matter where we've been living throughout the years. And as part of our work with Grand Forks and East Grand Forks, there will be an Indigenous Peoples Day celebration on October 14th in Grand Forks at the Fire Hall Theater. So that's Monday, the 14th of October at 5:30 p.m. And we wanted to invite you. We wanted to make sure that we had that strong connectivity across the river. And just a little bit more of my background, I'm Lakota, originally from western South Dakota. But of course, I have family and we have cultural connectedness to the Dakota people who were in this part of the country and western half of Minnesota. So that's actually why it's North Dakota, is because that's where the Dakota people are from originally. And I always like to say, you know, colonization came from the east, so they encountered the Dakotas first. If colonization had come from the west, it would have encountered the Lakotas, it would have been the Lakota territory, and we'd be in North Lakota instead of North Dakota. So I'd be on back like UNL instead of UND, had colonization come the other direction. So this really is, you know, my people's homeland, and it's really where I want to be. I have opportunities to work in other medical schools and other places around the country, but this is really where I feel that I belong. And just even think about Grand Forks and what that really means, you know, the confluence of the Red Lake River heading west and the Red River heading north. This was a gathering point for my people historically. So many thousands of years in the summer, of course, we didn't have highways, so we used the riverways for transportation. And actually this region was a gathering point in the summertime. So it really is a sacred place in the history of my people and for me personally and for my family. So every time I cross over the bridge, I think what that must have looked like with 1,000 teepees and 10,000 people, and how beautiful that must have been just right here. And we're happy to be in Minnesota. And just out of curiosity, how many people know what the word Minnesota means? It's usually about that many. Yeah, usually right around 0.
We can have our city attorney check it out for us.
But actually, it's from 2 Dakota words. Mani is water. So you may have heard of the term Mani Wichoni, water is life. So Mani is water, and Shota means cloudy or smoky. So we're coming up on the time of year with the weather changing. It seems like clouds rise off of the water. And with all the waterways in this part of the country, this is known as the land of the Mani Shota, literally the clouds rising off the water. Just a beautiful imagery. So that's why it's East Grand Forks Mani Shota, or we say Minnesota now, right? So that's who we are. We want to be involved in the community. We always have been, whether we lived in Arizona, South Dakota, or North Dakota. But just want to introduce ourselves, but also welcome you to this effort that we have with both East Grand Forks and Grand Forks American Indian Parent Committees. And we'll be celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day at 5:30 that Monday, the 14th. Again, the Fire Hall Theater in Grand Forks. And we'll have some other Indigenous scholars speaking. We'll have some artists and musicians there as well, and kid-friendly, of course. So just wanted to extend the invitation and introduce ourselves to you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to number 3, review of the 19 AJ1, 6th Avenue Northeast Improvement Bid Result. Mr. Emery.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we opened bids for the curb gutter and paving project on 6th Avenue Northeast for Friday, September 13th. We received a total of 4 bids, which I felt was good. I think we got pretty much most of the local contractors that we expected, and then got one out of Fargo. So the apparent low bid at this time is Paris Contracting out of Fargo. Paris has done a fair amount of work in town here the last few years. Just kind of right south of our office, they paved 15th Street Northeast. They've paved 17th Street Northeast. They've done some of our multi-use trails. So we've done a lot of work with Paris and really had good experiences with them. So the low bid did come in about 5% above my estimate. I knew I was very conservative with my numbers. I was a little concerned that I was going to be low, which I was. But we did receive 2 bids. Basically, the first and second bid, have a difference of about $1,900 between them. With the third bid, coming in only about $26,000 over the low bid. So again, feel we got very good competitive bids. I did take time last Friday. I did go around and meet with the property owners, A&L Potato, Northland Woodworking. Met with Rose at MGI Grain. She's kind of their bookkeeping person. Jeff, who's their manager, actually called me back today, and he's sending on all the information to their corporate office, I believe down in Texas. The only one I guess I personally did meet with was Russ Halverson, but I did send him information kind of in regards to what his potential assessments would be now with the actual bid. So everyone that I've talked to so far seems to still be in favor of the project. One thing we were hoping this year, one thing I was really pushing for was to try to get the underground utility work, the storm sewer work completed this fall, just to kind of allow it to go through that freeze-thaw cycle. A couple days before the bids, was hearing a lot of concerns with that completion date of this year for the utility work, just kind of due to the weather, contractor workload. So what I ended up doing is I changed it where the storm sewer could be completed next year, and the only stipulation was if they did do it next year, where we bring those storm sewer leads across the road for the catch basins, those areas will basically reinforce those before we pave, just to help for if we do get any settlement, just to kind of help hold everything together there too. So because I knew if we forced it to be done this year, our numbers were even going to go higher. So, and I did visit with the property owners too that, you know, we wouldn't be doing any work till next year at this point, so. So with that, I kind of gave you proposed budget. Again, since bids were higher than we originally discussed during the improvement hearing, kind of my recommendation is we probably look at doing the final assessment hearing prior to awarding bids. And specifically now, since they weren't going to do any work this year anyway, we do have time. So I guess unless you have any questions at this time, you know, in regards to the bids or and such, you know, my recommendation would be we just kind of probably move forward with the final assessment hearing and get a date set for that. So really tonight was kind of just for your information.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Emery? See none, sir?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Move on to number 4, request for local support for signal and ADA improvements. Mr. Emery.
Thank you again, Mr. President. So Matthew Upgren with MnDOT has kind of reached out to us about some potential traffic signal work that they have. They're kind of in the planning phases of. But the traffic signal replacement would be at Highway 220 and 14th Street Northeast. And since 14th Street Northeast is on our local system, they would be looking for the city to pay for half of the cost of the traffic signal replacement at that intersection. Right now, they are estimating about $300,000, so the city portion would be about $150,000. They're also kind of along that corridor. They're looking at doing a little bit of minor pedestrian work at 2 and 220, and then also up on 220 and 17th. But that work is being picked up 100% by MnDOT. So really what they're just kind of looking for is some type of resolution from the city, kind of giving them approval to move forward with their project, and, you know, just letting them know that you'd be willing to participate in our share of the traffic light signals. So I guess unless you have any questions, that's kind of what we're looking for. And again, I think at this point, you know, being it's 2022, you know, we do have state aid maintenance dollars we could potentially use. You know, the city could budget for it. You know, we do have some time, but I guess to kind of keep the ball rolling with MnDOT, they're looking for some type of resolution or approval from the city.
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Helms.
Thank you, Mr. President. On 14th, for the traffic lights, is that all they were going to change at that intersection, was just the lights? They're not changing nothing else there?
Nope, I think it was mainly just the lights there.
That was what was planned in that
Yep,
220
220 study.
Yeah,
They were
okay,
never going to change that one.
okay.
They were doing some work at 220 and 17th, kind
Yeah.
of some of the curb returns, to kind of shorten that distance for pedestrian
Are
crossing.
they still planning on putting those bump outs out there?
Yes, at 17th they are, I believe, yep. That's kind of part of this, I think 265,000 that they got listed on the back.
Yeah.
Is right at 220 and 17th. They're going to put some bump outs in there, maybe do something with that median, so it's kind of a refuge for the pedestrians.
We had that, you know, we were on that committee with that 220 study, you know, and a lot of people there, business owners on 220, expressed their opinion about those bump outs and stuff there, and with all the truck traffic, and like me, even with my buses, you know, they move those corners out. In our eyes, that's going to be more dangerous than it is to.
Yeah, and from what I've seen, Dale, I don't think, you know, these are really large bump outs. It's just, I think, kind of squaring them up. So I'm just trying to make them a little safer with the pedestrians. So.
Because even right now, it's pretty hard to make that corner for, you know, unless you can swing really wide, then it's not bad. But so that's my only concern on that. Well, I guess I'd like to see a final drawing or whatever they're planning on doing.
I would
there.
assume as MnDOT kind of starts to develop some plans, we'll probably get a chance to review those too. So, or I can even let Matthew know too that we want to kind of stay informed of what they do.
Right. Okay. Now he's the one that's been coming to all the meetings, right? Is he the one from Bemidji, or is that somebody else?
The one from Bemidji from MnDOT has been that Darren Lash.
Oh yeah.
And then if you remember, the guy that ran the 220 study was
Mike Anderson.
Mike Anderson, yeah, with Aligned Engineering, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? See none, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, move on to number 4, request for local support for signal. We just did that one. Number 5, request to declare surplus vehicles and bicycles. Chief Hedlund.
Thank you, Mr. President. This will be our second auction this year. When I requested authorization to declare surplus vehicles and bikes previously, we didn't actually have the formal list of the bikes. At that point in time, we didn't wind up getting ready of any bikes. This time we got a little bit more on track and got the bikes all taken care of. They're already out on display in the front of the police department and a number of lots that, assuming this is approved, we'll move forward that auction probably starting next Tuesday after the council meeting where this will be formally approved. And we have, I believe it's 17 or 18 vehicles that are on the list that you folks have. And then I believe fire department has a vehicle, and then several vehicles from Public Works will also be involved in the auction.
Do you have any questions at this time? See none, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Number 6, consider revision and adoption of Greenway user rules and regulations. Chief Hedlund.
This is a item that actually affects a number of our departments. It affects Public Works, certainly Parks and Rec Department, and then of course our department as well. Quite some years ago, roughly 15, 16 years ago, East Grand Forks adopted rules rather than ordinances for, I'm sure, a variety of different reasons. I lived in East Grand Forks at that time, but I obviously wasn't a part of the East Grand Forks government in any way at that time. I guess I would like to see us adopt formal ordinances, somewhat along the lines of what Grand Forks has done. I think it just a little bit more clearly formalizes what is allowed and isn't allowed within the Greenway. And it makes it a little bit cleaner if we do wind up having somebody violate it. The potential penalties as they are stated in our rules are very vague and actually refer to some things that we don't even have in place at this point in time. So it would be tough to actually, based on just those rules. There are other state ordinances, or state statutes, excuse me, that we could potentially cite people under, but I think if we had ordinances, it would be able to more clearly define what people can and can't do down there.
Do you have any questions? You want us to, I see you have Grand Forks is in here. Do you want?
Yeah, I have a copy of the Grand Forks ordinances in there. So.
Is this something that you work with Mr. Murphy and present something to us that we'd change, or is there something that, I mean, how do we want to look at this?
Maybe Mr. Gulstead at the table?
And I can take a look at it. I just remember this coming forward a number of years ago, and I can't remember the exact reason why we didn't opt for ordinance, a formalized ordinance on it. What I would like to do is take a look at the Grand Forks one, see if it all applies to us in Minnesota, and then I could bring something back if it's the wishes of this council to put some formal ordinance in place regarding the Greenway.
I think anything that's going to help them assist enforcing not being on there and what other activities go on, I think it's something we need to look at that they can use to enforce it. I think it's probably the best route to go. And
this kind of came to light when we had some damage done to the Greenway recently by a young man that was driving down in the Greenway. We have dealt with that subject at this point in time. We aren't citing him, but we're reserving the right to do so. He is making arrangements to pay for the damages that were caused by him. So we do have that moving forward, and he and his parents are aware that if he doesn't take care of that, then he is still looking to potentially get in a citation for his actions down there. But that would be under state statute rather than a city ordinance.
Mr. Mayor.
As part of this conversation, I'm down there running and biking a fair amount, and there are sections of our Greenway, particularly close to the river, that are heavily used by motorized four-wheelers. And we're going to have to decide how we handle that. It may be like our signs on the berm, because it's a cat and mouse in a way also. But if they're off on the edges and enjoying that and no one's complaining, I don't know. But that's another gray area that somehow we should at least consider. It's a really nice wilderness area down there, and if they stay way away from the trails, they don't really interfere with my enjoyment of the trail system.
I
Mr.
may?
Gulston.
Mr. President, I do recall that part of the reasons that we didn't adopt the Greenway, or the Greenway as an ordinance was, there was some discussions regarding getting near the river to be able to fish.
Yeah.
Because there's no motorized vehicles in the Greenway. So all of a sudden, what you're doing is you're saying you can't do it, and so it becomes an enforcement issue. And so that was one of the biggest issues, specifically down past the dock and the lower level down there, people driving and fishing along the river. Technically, that is illegal according to the rules because it's a motorized vehicle off of a road that's driving on the Greenway. So I'm going to need some direction from this body on how you want to adopt or adapt or prevent that when we look at drafting that ordinance.
Right now, under the rules, motorized vehicles are prohibited from that area. But the rules don't really give us a very clear penalty aspect to if they're violated.
This will be a good conversation. I'm sure it'll come back.
So, I mean,
Thank you.
with that, how people want to go there and fish, are we going to say, no, you got to block from the road then? I mean, that's the argument they're going to come back at us with right away. I mean,
I would think that there'd be some areas that probably would be the requirement. Other areas, potentially in the LaFave Park area, as some of the long-term plans have looked at, we've even discussed having potential fishing areas with a semi-developed roadway that people could access those areas from. If it's an area that's truly in the Greenway, the more wilderness-style Greenway, where they're going to have to go up and over our existing dikes, and there is no natural roadways down there. In my opinion, they're creating the potential of causing damage to our levee system, and it shouldn't be allowed. And if we have that in place, and perhaps if we take a little more aggressive stance on getting better signage up there, makes it a little bit more clear for our officers as well as the people that are in violation of that. Makes it's never going to be an easy thing to enforce. I mean, just if somebody jumps on a four-wheeler and takes off through the woods, it's going to be difficult to chase after them. But at least it gives us a fighting chance if it's more formal ordinance and as well as I'd like to see some additional signage. And I know Mr. Stordahl and Mr. Hedlund have already discussed that.
I guess I don't know how you want to proceed.
Well,
with this.
if I may, I think how I would, and I would like Mr. Gall said, to work with me a little bit on this aspect of it too, because I think there can be areas of the Greenway that are off limits to the motorized vehicles, because I know we do have several areas along the river there where you can access for fishing by motorized vehicles. We even have one that is accessed that's a handicap accessible area just off of River Road. The area where the dock systems are, you can access that pretty readily with the motorized vehicles. And so if you do want to be able to just kind of drive up and fish, we do have areas that are available to that. There are more remote areas, and I'll just say on a personal note, my son loves to do quite a bit of fishing, and so we've done a lot of river fishing, just him and I, from the bank. And if you want to get to some of those nice spots, we hike it through some of those areas to get back there, and it's kind of part of the experience. So I think we can write it so that both are available. If you want to be able to drive up, that you're going to be a little bit more limited in your spots where you fish. But if you want to hike a little bit to get to some of the more remote access areas and some of the better ones, so I think that's part of the nature of the Greenway. It's not the exact same all the way through the Greenway. There's more urban areas and more rural areas.
I don't know if it could possibly work, but now that we have a provision for some UTVs on our city streets, would there be any little sections of Greenway that could be identified as a UTV access? I mean, you'd have to do it fully with the DNR and step it back like that. And then they maybe could take their UTV down to certain areas just that we've identified and do their fishing or whatever they might want to do. You would not open it up to the whole Greenway, and it would, from an enforcement standpoint, you'd have it clear that, I don't even know if the DNR would allow it, but it would be kind of nice for those who might want to go to the water.
State Park, you couldn't.
Yeah. No, not in there. But I'm thinking about some other areas, more remote areas.
The problem with some of those is they take it to the next level.
So a couple of years, we had the same problem on the south end by South Point there, that access point there. We had some issues.
They'd love to go in right there. Because it's pretty open, it's pretty flat, and you can go a lot of different places, right? That's where my home is close to that. And there's a little two-wheel road that you can see from where they go. I do not have a four-wheeler.
I just,
I do not.
That was
have
the
a
next
four-wheeler.
question on the agenda.
It's never bugged me, to be honest, as a resident there. I mean, I see the established trail, and it's never caused me any interference.
If it was something that wanted to be looked at, the DNR does have a state aid system for ATVs similar to snowmobiles that we have, but that would be the concern that I would have too, is where do you draw the line
Yep.
on where people do go and don't go, and do they stay on the designated trail system? And to have that needs to be a volunteer organized trail maintenance system similar to the snowmobile trail, which we don't have that in place right now either. But we have had some discussion with people from the DNR about that, just intermittently in the past.
Something to consider. Not that I'm locked onto it by any means, but should be part of the conversation.
Mr. Gulstead.
Just as a point of curiosity, how many UTV permits have we issued?
I don't know off the top of my head. It's not very many.
You'll have 3 people down.
I think the direction is that you're going to work with Mr. Gulstead and the chief and maybe look at some things and bring it back.
Yep, that's what I have written down.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, sir. Number 7, consider amendment to agreement with Northern Valley Machine. Mr. Gorte.
About 3 or 4 years ago, when Northern Valley Machine expanded into the former, into the building that's next to them.
Ideal Aerosmith.
Ideal Aerosmith, thank you. We provided tax credits to them under the Border Cities program, and we provided them $100,000 tax credits, but it was over 5 years, and the discussions were to do this for 5 years. We thought the program was such that we could apply the $20,000 equally over a 5-year period and reduce their taxes from what the disparity program allows. The State Department of Revenue has decided that the programs are mutually exclusive, so in order to meet the 5-year promise that was made to Northern Valley Machine, we need to change the number of tax credits that are available. We have the tax credits available in our bank of tax credits right now. It will require an additional $45,000 of tax credits to be used for Northern Valley Machine in order to fulfill that promise that was made.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Gorte? Mr. Bitter?
Thank you. We did this last year, too?
We did it for the hotel last year, yes.
For who?
The hotel.
And I think I was against it last
Yes,
year,
you were.
too, because we said $100,000, whether it's 3 years or 5 years, $100,000 is $100,000. So I'll be against this one also.
I understand.
Thank you.
I was going to say the same thing, that that's a 2-part agreement, 100,000 in 5 years. If they used it all in 3, they still got their $100,000 worth.
But I would point out that the $100,000 that was done under the way that everybody understood the program to operate. The DOR said that program does not operate that way, so we have to make an adjustment because of what DOR did. That's what the point I would make to you.
Mr. Gorte, are you saying that even though we applied it the way we did, they did not get the full benefit of what was promised to them?
They have used to date approximately $84,000 of tax credits out of that $100,000, so that in order to provide for the last 2 years of the 5 years that we had talked about, we need to increase the number of tax credits available to them.
Fulfill the promise we made to them.
Yes. And it's because had we understood what we do, we've made a couple of changes in the system since then. One, we provide 1 year of assistance unless there's a special reason to do it. We provide 1 year of assistance now. Second change is that now we go through the county and DOR, Department of Revenue, to get an estimate of how many tax credits we need each year. And if we decide to go if we decide to go 1 year, we have an estimate. If we decide to go for more years because we have a primary business that we're wishing to benefit to that extent, we then get an estimate of how many tax credits we need over multiple years and apply it that way. So we've made a change in the way that the tax credits will be applied henceforth. This is the last one that's going through the system under what our understanding of was of the rules prior to that action by the Department of Revenue.
Anybody else have anything? So they're going to move forward for a vote on next
Please.
week?
Public hearing is next
Mr.
week.
Johnson, sir.
How many employees do they have, do you know?
71.
71?
When they came in to talk to us, they had promised to retain 65 employees. They have grown by 6 employees in the last 3 years. And they are required to report to us each year on what their employment is. They're required to retain 65, but they have been growing.
Good for them.
So it's been beneficial to us.
Anybody else have anything? See none, sir. Thank you. Number 8, special assessment policy update. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Council President. At the last work session that this was discussed, there was direction given to staff to bring the assessment policy from Warren, Minnesota. Another one that's close by that might be comparable. So with that, we have gotten the Warren one. Their policy is fairly straightforward. And their standard assessment for new construction is the property owners are assessed 100% of new construction costs, and reconstruction is assessed at 30% of what the costs are. So with that, that is the report. Not much else has changed as far as potential funding and whatnot. So I guess I will take any comments and questions from the council.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
I know one thing we were going to do is to get our heads around the timelines of when we would do the various stages with our current ordinance that we have, or our current policy for street replacement. So we would do plans and specifications, we would put it out for bids, we would somewhere in there come up with an assessment roll that would go out to the individuals, and then there would be an appeals period, that at the end of that appeals period, we could finalize, let the bid, and go forward with the project. Did we get our timelines straight in our mind, how that all plays out?
I don't have it before me, but I did put it in a memo. I didn't bring it with, but yeah, that's pretty straightforward. There's basically a 90-day time frame from beginning to end that you have to deal with.
And all the bids would hold that long, so we wouldn't have like a sunset on any of the bid packages that came?
Yeah, and like in our specs, what we typically have in our specs is the bids are good for 60 days. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gulstead, is once we hold that final assessment hearing, they have to provide an appeal, either in letter or vocally, at the final assessment hearing. And if they don't do that, they cannot appeal.
That's correct. What happens is we give them notice, final assessment hearing, they either have to, at the hearing or prior, give us written notification. If they don't, then that appeal, except for under reasonable circumstances, which are fairly limited, can't appeal it. They lose that. Then what happens is if they do give you the notice, they have 30 days in which to actually file an action with court. So if they don't, then that appeal period's lapsed. So from that date, you've got 60 days. When I say 90 days, it's kind of the front end of it when we're starting and working on it. So.
I think the suggestion I would make is perhaps we could bring to the council for an up and down vote the possibility of a revised policy that would take a portion of the cost and make it a citywide cost. Okay, whatever portion that is, if it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% would shift from the local property owner to a citywide cost. Bring that before the council for an up or down vote. I feel like just in conversation, there's some consensus to leave it alone, to leave the policy alone, and more than likely, it feels to me like that vote would be a vote no. And then perhaps we could decide to go forward with paving a couple of our streets with our current policy, trying to work on these timelines, right? If it goes that way, if we get a no vote and the consensus is let's leave the policy alone, let's continue to replace whatever streets we replace with our current policy, then I think we should step in and start into the plans and specs and whatnot for these couple of streets that we've identified. That would be my recommendation. Bring it to an up or down vote, some percentage that would carry to the greater community. If it's voted up or down, whichever it is, take that next step of replacing streets either with the new policy or with the current policy. Does that make sense?
And I think the absolute minimum you can assess by state law is 20%. That's the minimum you could go.
So you wanting that to be brought forth to the council meeting? So next Tuesday?
Do we have a percentage we want to put in there, or do we want the motion to be made, whoever would make the motion would put in for the percentage that they feel comfortable with?
Are you looking at, and I apologize, I was going to bring copies and I'd do that, but we had looked at a couple projects. We had looked at 11th Avenue Northeast out in the industrial park, kind of between Highway 2 and 10th. And
20th
also,
and 5th.
And then also 20th and 5th. And we looked at different scenarios if there was a 30% assessment, 40, 50, and kind of what those costs would be. Is that what you're kind of looking for?
So I feel like, just with the preference of council members that I've heard speak of it publicly, I've had council members say, I'm not getting a real cry from the community to revise our policy. I like it the way it is. I think I'll leave it alone. This is the vibe that I'm getting from the council, and I respect it, because I mean, I just want us to go forward with some kind of policy and not have streets beyond their lifespan with holes that really are hard on vehicles. You're cutting tires, you're breaking shocks. We owe it to our community to replace some streets. So, if you ask me, with that climate, I would think the local, well, let's back it up. Let's say the city share would not exceed probably 30 to 40% on this pass. If it came forward as a resolution to vote, revising our street replacement policy in that shifting the load 30 to 40% onto the city, I feel that would be the absolute top. Or if we vote to leave it as is, I'm totally fine with that. But to me, it's going to fall into that range. Max, probably 30, 40 comes to the city. Or we'll leave it alone and try to replace some streets with the existing policy, which has worked for a long time. It's not a bad policy whatsoever.
Mr. Gallstead.
The only thing that I want to remind everybody on is that even under the scenario that we're talking right now, is if in fact there is an objection, the council's going to have to make a decision on whether or not they're going to go forward with the project. So then what you typically want to do is not award the bids until the objection period is over.
Right.
Otherwise, they would have already been awarded.
Yep, that's what we're saying. You don't actually award it until the appeals period ends.
So then there's still going to be that decision if in fact there's an objection. How's the council going to handle it? Or are they just going to automatically say, we're not going to do the project? If that's the case, you're going to potentially still run into the scenario that you're discussing right now on street maintenance.
You'd have to look at the number of objections and the total
But
dollar.
I'm just saying that's potential.
It's a numbers game.
Okay.
I think one of the questions I had last time was, let's say we had it at, the city responsible for 30% or 40%, whatever number you had, was, what is that dollar amount? We don't know it. I mean,
He has a ballpark.
But that's just on that.
That's one project.
One project, two projects. I mean, we're talking.
And you can't,
going
to
down.
me, you can't say, we're going to do 30% on 10th and 11th, and then we're gonna do 40% on.
No, it'd be the same.
It has to be the same, and
It'd
it
be
has to
absolutely-
stay, and it doesn't matter if it's 3 million or $125.
But we would cap it, in other words, we cannot start up 20 projects like this, right? We'd say our commitment on cash flow is thus and no more. Until that one's paid for, we have no opening to do another project, right? So you'd cap it at some number.
I mean, so what levy every year you're gonna set aside for this? What percentage,
You're gonna
5%?
Yeah, are we gonna
We
go
gotta
back to the
budget it.
bond then?
Yeah.
So you'd set a number of debt service that you are willing to commit to this on an annual basis. Whatever that number is, that's how many total dollar of projects you can have open. And
See,
until that one's
10%
paid.
increase in property taxes.
Right.
To cover it.
10%.
To whatever dollar.
Well, you want to hear people cry.
1%, 2%, 10 is just an arbitrary number. It
I
could
know.
be any number that we all agree to. It could be 1%, 2%. My gut says I wouldn't go over 2, just so you know. In servicing a debt, 2%.
So are you talking that we would just pay back, be on the roll itself and pay back every year that dollar amount, so that it's $20,000?
Some
Or
number.
are you talking paying that whole amount and then set this, people who are being assessed at 70%, they're on the special assessments every year?
Good thought. So I feel like for sure the neighborhood would have to go on the assessment roll for that longer period of time because it'll be a big dollar amount. That's, what do we do, 15 to 20 year specials on those?
Well, that's what we've been doing now with the 100% assessment rates.
It's going to have to be in that
Only like,
ballpark.
what, 7 to 10 years?
Typically,
That's mill and overlay seal coat.
well, typically, it's 7 to 10 years for even for a street reconstruction for the payback period. And that's where the city puts in their bond levy for that. So for example, like if, I'll just know that, and I'm just going to say this because this is the city that I'm familiar with and I've worked with it. So the city that I came from before, it was a 7-year payback. In there, you know, the majority was paid for of the city as a whole. So what they did, it was a 7-year payback. So then
Because the dollar was much less.
Yeah, and what we did then is every year, so they did a street project every year. So what they did is, so we knew that the levy amount was for that particular year was for that budget was say let's just say $100,000. Then we knew that on a payback for 7 years, you need to, so 700,000. We knew then, and the city paying 70%, then we knew that we could do a project of, let's say, $1.5 million project that each year, and then so the city's portion then would be that amount. So you tailor how much you reconstruct based on how much you have available to pay as a city's portion.
Back to my main question is that the city paying upfront our cost, or are we spreading ours out?
We spread it out.
That's what I want to make sure that we understand.
Typically, it's spread out, and it's the same amount as what you offer so let's say, so you take out a debt service for 7 years. That means the city pays back their portion of it for the 7 years. Because obviously, you take out a debt service for the amount of the project as a whole. The city levies for their portion of that debt service payment, and then we assume that we're going to be getting the special assessments from those particular properties, and that those two combine then make that payment for each year. So then you pay that debt service off in 7 years. So once you would levy that,
One project every 7 years.
Depending on how you want to stack it. So
that would be my thought, Chad. That's how I would want it.
So for example, so if you
So
did
one project every 7 years?
We haven't done one in a very long time, and this one has needed it for more than 10 years. 20th Street has needed it for more than 10 years.
Let me just finish. So for example, it says, let's just say, I'm just throwing arbitrary. So say the council decides that they're willing to levy $100,000, which would be less than 2% of the overall tax increase. So we were to levy $100,000 for that project. So once you levy that $100,000, then that amount goes, up for that levy for that particular year, that 2%. However, it's already on there, so you're not starting back. So the next year, you just would keep levying that $100,000. So it would go up that first year, but it wouldn't be shown as an increase the following year because you're still levying that $100,000 each year.
So I would not support that large flow of projects annually. I'd say you cap it at a dollar amount, and you'd probably have to pay it off before you did another project in our environment where we are, to not blow up our budget.
But look at it this way too, let's say we levy for it, then we're gonna be on that 7-year payback, so we're paying interest on that also.
Correct.
We already levied it, so the taxes plus whatever that factor is of the percentage rate is actually still gonna go back to the citizens too, so we have to figure that in the mindset of what we're totally paying for it across citywide.
I think current rate is right about 4%, 4 to
I'm just saying
4.5% on
that-
a bond levy.
What I would propose we would do in that case is if we had the cash to pay it in a lump sum, we'd do it, but still wait the 7 years as if we were paying it annually to not do another project. So we'd have the right to pay it off early, but you'd still track it as if you're paying it annually from the standpoint of when you would consider another project.
Mr. Emery?
I was going to say, as far as the overall assessments go, I think on these reconstruction projects, we're going to be looking at that 15 to 20 years, just because when we get into the complete reconstruction, we're looking at the utilities also. You got the water, the sanitary, the storm, so, I mean, these reconstruction projects are costing more than a brand new construction.
Because you got the demo first.
You got to do all the demo first before you can even start the new construction, so. And like the 6th Avenue Northeast paving project that we're just talking about, I mean, that's a 20-year assessment, The 7 years, we were
Big
doing
bucks.
the street improvement projects, just the mill and overlay seal coats, we were doing those 7 years. So I think if you're going to be affordable for the residents, you're going to have to string it out for 15 to 20 years, at least the assessment portion.
I remember when Wayne was here in finance, we talked about making sure that the amortization of the repayment matches the life of the asset. Well, the life of a mill and overlay is that 7 to 10 years, so you pay it off in 7 to 10 years. The life of a complete street replacement is 20 plus, so I'm fine with a 15 to 20 year am on a bond on a full street replacement. That's the difference, is you look at the life of the asset, the lifespan of it, and it's perfectly fine to amortize your repayment over the life of that asset going in.
And if we do 100%, we don't have to worry about that.
Which is totally fine. I'm not in any way, but this is a good conversation, important.
Even if we do 100%, the city's still got a bond for it, because the city's got to pay everything up front. So you.
My thought process on this too is all the work that Public Works has done and everybody else has done on figuring out when we need to replace all these and get into that, timelines of we did these ones here, we're moving on to these, and then we start going back. I mean, once we do this, is this going to screw that up of when we're doing things and how we can do it? Are we going to get down to that point where Jason comes in and says, well, we have to do this? Well, we can't do it because we're not to that point where we're paying this one off.
It could hold us up. It really could.
So
but
we're back to the problem we're having right now.
Hopefully not 20 years holding us up, but.
So,
If you're gonna do a complete street replacement up on 20th, and then you're gonna wait 20 years to do the one on the frontage road out here?
Whatever we decide is our max. That's all for our conversation.
That's the discussion we're having right
Yeah.
now, so I don't know if you're able to do that. You're possibly gonna have to bond to get the major one done right now, and then go on your rotation. But if you've got two streets that are equally,
And 5th, 20th and 5th, which are,
I'm just trying to figure out how you're gonna string that out for 20 years without doing anything on the second one.
Increase the taxes 2 more percent.
Well, but yeah, I get it.
yeah, let's, I think this will be good to bring it in, have an up and down vote. Now we know what's in play.
Again, can I ask one more question? So is that number, is that something you want to talk about now, or do you want us to put the motion together with a blank in there, and whoever makes the motion can set a percentage, like the numbers you throw out, say 30 or 40%.
Well, what council member is going to make the motion?
I think just do. We have a motion.
Mayor wants to bring it forth, you can't make the motion there. I mean,
The only reason I want to bring it is so we can put it to bed.
I understand.
And then take whatever policy we have and try to do some street replacement, just so we can put it to bed. That's all.
Why was it even brought up?
It was brought up because we, on another project with special benefits test, we had to cough up 100,000 or so on a street replacement project. So we've been burned on this locally. It's happened already. And our neighbors around the area have revised their street replacement policies to try and come in step with this special benefits test. We're among those who are behind on this, which is okay. Maybe we choose another way on purpose. But if you wonder why, we've had to cough up 100,000 out of the blue because we were taken to court and
go
ahead.
And we lost.
And we lost. And neighboring communities have taken steps to anticipate that problem ahead of time.
Anybody else have anything at this time? Besides me?
It's good stuff.
I don't know. You want to bring it forth? I guess you leave it blank and see if the motion gets made.
Or do we bring it forward with the mayor's suggestion?
What was that again?
Well, you said anywhere from the 30 to 40%.
30 to 40, yeah. Yeah. You'll have to pick one of those probably. But maybe whoever would make the motion could put in a number like 30 or 40.
Well, as far as staff, if you're asking me to pick those two, I would bring forward with the 40.
City share.
Yep.
Bring it. Up and down vote. I think I know which way this one's going, which is fine.
Direction from the council then?
Yep.
Okay.
Someone might hit that dead horse, it might come alive.
Alrighty. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Grassel.
Second.
Second by Helms. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried, means adjourned. Take a couple minutes, move on to the special stuff.
Like redoing it right alongside? The utilities? Yeah. I don't know, a lot of times because they get replaced right in that spot. That's because you engineers use the same lines or what? Yeah.
It's not so much, and even the utilities, Chad, I mean,
I've been with,
if you're pulling them out as you're replacing, that doesn't mean it's a street replacement.
I can't climb steps.
Call to order the special meeting for City of East Grand Forks for Tuesday, September 24th, 2019. It is now 5:58. City Clerk, please call the roll. City Administrator.
Yes. Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olstad.
Here.
Council Vice President Chad Grassel.
here.
Council Members Clarence Vetter.
Here.
Dale Helms.
Here.
Tim Riepel.
Here.
Tim Johnson.
Here.
Mark Demers.
Present.
Does term McCorm. Number one, consider approving the sale of Coulee View lots 2 through 7, Block 1, for the development of twin homes and threeplex to Robertson Construction, contingent upon earnest money being received by the city for all the properties.
Move.
Moved by Demers.
Second.
Second by Riepel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Entertain motion to adjourn.
Move.
Moved by Riepel.
Second.
Second by Helms. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried, means adjourned.